Welcome to episode 56 of the Search with Candour podcast, recorded on Thursday, the 9th of April 2020. My name is Mark Williams Cook, and today we're going to be talking about e-commerce during coronavirus. And I'm very lucky. Today I've been joined by Luke Carthy, an independent e-commerce growth consultant. Luke, very, very happy to have you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, I am chuffed to be here, man. And I've got my super silky voice on. Hay fever's killing me at the moment, so it's kind of attacked my throat a little bit.
Oh,
And it's
really?
kind of made me, yeah. When I get a sore throat or a cold, it kind of makes me really kind of Barry White-esque, and I'm not complaining. So definitely perfect podcast voice. I'm happy.
But you're okay, because obviously at the moment you're making me sound nervous that you're saying you've got cold symptoms. You're
Yeah,
okay?
don't worry, I'm good. It's purely
Okay.
pollen, and the reason why I know that is because when I take my my hay fever, which I haven't today, everything disappears and goes away. I'm cool.
Okay, glad to hear it. So how
Yeah.
are you getting on in isolation? I saw actually you said you delivered your first remote consultancy at the end of last month. How did that go?
Yeah, that was I started it being super anxious, if I'm honest. Little sprogs, little kids running around. I got a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old. And yeah, I was a little bit anxious about that. And then the kind of the human element, right? The whole body language and being in the same room together. And that's how I've always done consultancy. So I kind of felt that something would be missing or taken away from the fact that we're doing it online. But it actually went really, really well. Solid days consultancy. And a couple of the things that really jumped out that I didn't expect was the benefit of no one really having the pressure to take notes, because we could record the whole session. My client could have that as a reference point, or they could store it, keep it. But also, when we did take some notes, some follow up actions, and some bits we wanted to throw down, some links, we had a collaborative document, as a Google Docs or a Notion document, just to collaborate on and make sure all our notes are collective. Any questions she had, she could throw on there, and I could respond to those. So it worked out really, really well, to the point where I think going forward, I'll be offering remote consultancy globally going forward. So yeah, it worked really, really well. I'm chuffed to pieces.
That's really interesting. It's actually a similar experience to what we've had agency side. So we've done a few bits of remote training before, but obviously, like you now, we've had to push everything from workshops to training to the in-house stuff we do over
Yeah.
video. And I've had a few clients initially say, well, I think we'd prefer it, we prefer actually just to wait and do it in person. And I've managed to talk a few of those, most of those people around. And actually, once they've done it, they said that was actually way easier than we thought it was going to be. Because I think a lot of people still have this, it's going to be like, early 2000s Skype, everything breaking out. But with screen share, with collaborative documents, I actually found it really, really easy. And like you say, we've got the kind of shared experience of, families in the background, pets, people coming to the door I had during a workshop.
Yeah.
And everyone's actually kind of okay with it, because I think we're all in the same boat at the moment, right?
Yeah, exactly that. And it actually, in a weird way, we kind of had more rapport as a result of it, because she has a young child at home. I've got 2 young children at home, as I may have already mentioned. So it's like we kind of already put the disclaimers up and says, look, things might go down. Like, we might have just kids walking into shop and asking for a sandwich or something. But no, it works really, really well, and I'm super impressed. She's really happy, and yeah, long may this kind of thing continue. But normally, my clients are predominantly based in the UK on a one-to-one consultancy basis. But going forward, it will definitely be something that I do internationally. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that pans out.
I think that's interesting, because we have seen a lot of companies go through this forced evolution of how they do business. So apart from people like you, agencies like us doing consultancy remotely, we have seen a lot of companies change their offering, adapt it so they can move it online very quickly. And I think now everyone is obviously at home. I saw you and Rand talking about how Cloudflare are reporting huge increases of internet usage, like 20, 30, 40% in some cases. So I assume this means, among other things, we're getting new customers coming online that maybe haven't been online before and maybe not as confident about buying online. Is that something, what can companies do to kind of get a handle on this? How should they be adapting?
Yeah, for sure. So I think there's definitely kind of two very clear trends, right? As you said, so traffic, internet usage is up, whatever capacity that is in, whether it's browsing or media, people watching stuff online, or kind of looking on e-commerce sites and looking at different businesses. But I think what certainly we can see is that typically conversion is down, right? People are more cautious, taking more time to buy, or kind of creating wish lists, if you like, or dream lists of things that they would want. So what I'd probably say e-commerce businesses can absolutely do is try and capture an audience via entertainment. So maybe shift the KPI from conversion to getting them to buy to kind of getting them to buy at some stage in the future. So to throw in an example idea, I had an epiphany one morning while I was probably throwing porridge. All my kids were throwing porridge around the dining room, and it just kind of happened where I thought, well, hold on a minute. If no one's going to be buying clothes right now, it doesn't mean that people don't want clothes. It just means that people don't want clothes right now. So why not be in a situation where you can encourage people to use your site, to browse, to build styles, to kind of maybe build some dream wardrobes. So I guess one, you've got a kind of entertainment edge, if you like. Um, Two, you have a bit of a social kind of isolation distraction. And three, you're getting bucket loads of data from people who want to combine styles together, frequent items that people are going to buy together when we basically move an entire season. So we're going to go from, in the world of fashion, um, from sort of spring, summer to kind of to autumn, winter in June, July, because of course, fashion brands are typically a quarter ahead of the calendar. So it's very difficult for a brand to kind of not have any real conversion data and then try and work out what people are going to want to buy, what kind of trends and fashion and colors people want to wear. So having the ability of allowing e-commerce brands to play with that and almost kind of add gamification, if you like, to that kind of capacity could really, really be helpful. So you've kind of got okay, you're not spending right now, but let's make sure that you remember us when this time's over or when you're more confident in buying stuff online. And I think that could be really powerful. So to kind of reiterate, less focused on the immediate sale. If you can, I appreciate not all companies kind of have the financial, I guess, security to be able to do this, but this could certainly help buy-in from customers in the medium to long term.
If we can break that down, because I think you've touched on 3 points there in terms
Sure.
of e-commerce, which is firstly, the points we've made to clients is people are literally bored at the moment being at home.
Yes.
Even searches on Google just for bored and I am bored are like 10 times up at the moment.
Yeah.
Secondly, we've got a change of behavior during this period. So I think I saw you talking about, for instance, how loungewear searches are going right up in terms of fashion. So maybe
Yeah.
people are thinking more about comfort and utility while they're at home rather than I will look good in this and other people will look at me. And then you've also touched on this post trend. There's lots of people in marketing talking about how a lot of things are going to come back in a vengeance and people are almost going to celebrate the things that they're missing out on. So
Hmm.
if we
Hmm.
start, you've mentioned there about enter, kind of entertaining people and having this social connection at this period. Is there any kind of process that companies can apply? Who should be involved? How do you come up with these ideas when you're saying, about building a dream list? And actually, I saw another really great example you have, which I'd put into the kind of during this time behavior, which was for nannies and childcare workers. Obviously, you said they're likely to be losing out on income because they're not going to be going around houses,
Yeah.
and you recommended they did a series of like potty training videos and blogs because it's a great time. Searches are up. So two great ideas, I think, that cover those first 2 points. What would you say to companies? How because I think a lot are in this panic mode and getting blinkered and just we need to stop and we need. How do they think like this?
Yeah, so I mean, it sounds super cliche, but it's kind of getting to the mindset of what your customers are doing. If they're not spending money, if they can't spend money, whether it's a case of they don't have the cash or they're just not, in the mindset of buying anything right now, then what else would they be looking at? So as a parent, first thing, we've got a 2-year-old daughter, and obviously we're all kind of locked up together. So why not take this opportunity to absolutely go and capitalize on potty training? So, but what you typically find is you've just got to try and think about if you were in this mindset, what is it you'd be doing now in the world of isolation? If you couldn't get outside, if you couldn't go and walk to the shops, to the high street, what would you be doing instead? So, I mean, another example, I guess, is this whole work from home movement, where yeah, people who will have the luxury to work from home, can do so. But there's also a lot of people who don't have the tools, if you like, to work from home. So desk sales are going to be up massively, and then you can maybe think about content ideas around the world of desks. So just to think of one off the top of my head, for example, it could be something like how to prevent coffee ring stains on your brand new desk that you just ordered, for example, or best ways to organize in this situation, or how to turn something from uh, something lying around your house into a workspace. So not everyone, again, has the cash to go away and buy a brand new desk, or has the space to go and fit a new desk. But actually, what kind of things does the typical homeowner, or someone living in a rental property have that they could use to turn into a desk? So I have like a coffee table here. And for example, I might just have an idea where I sit on the floor and use that as a desk platform from time to time. So I think to kind of distill that down as an answer, it's just kind of think about how you could communicate and better the lives of your customers, even if they can't necessarily buy from you right now. And I think that really helps. And there's a lot of brands that won't necessarily be doing that, especially smaller brands, brands that are less fluid in digital, and are less adaptable to change. I think it's really important to think about how you can help people get through this, and then at the other end, think about how you can turn that help, into sales, into brand exposure, into conversion at some stage.
So I think it's you could describe actually as quite a unique situation for brands in terms of it's very rare that everyone, including brands, has this shared experience, which gives you an opportunity to show empathy to your customers. Because there is always this very fine line in kind of normal times when brands, are trying to, if they're genuinely trying to show empathy, it is always met with skepticism a lot of time of,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
they just want our money. And I think it is a unique time to actually be able to offer something and be there for those people at that time.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Just, I guess, one final example, just to throw on the back of
Hmm.
that, is Google Hangouts, or Google G Suite, sorry. So I don't know if you've seen, but I got an email probably 2 weeks ago now. And what they've done is take the basic package and give users the premium package or the enterprise package features, which means you can now go away and record your Google Hangouts. They save to the cloud, and you can share them with your clients or your family or whoever it is you're talking to over Google Hangouts. And that's a really nice thing to do. They didn't have to do that. They could have absolutely, done a cliche 10% discount off enterprise, and cleaned up. But I think that's the difference between having a campaign that looks and smells like profiteering versus trying to help people. And I think, yeah, behind the scenes, there's absolutely going to be a commercial benefit there, because Google know when you've had a taste of enterprise, there's a lot of people who will think, do you know what? I want that feature. I'm absolutely going to go and spend the extra 15, 20, $30 a month or whatever it is to leverage that. But it's very much an empathetic move. It helps people out. And as a G Suite user myself, hey, I'm probably going to be an enterprise user going forward at the end of this, because that is a feature that I absolutely can leverage now. But using that kind of thing, what is your pain point for your audience in this, and find a way to make it easier for them. I think that would really be quite powerful right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're recording this podcast online at the moment with Zencaster, and they've done exactly the same with their kind of free package. They've given us pro kind of level service at the moment. It's also a good time to mention, again, I mentioned on an earlier episode, there is a website set up by a very kind chap who we've interviewed before called Dom Hodgson, which is searchstarterpack.com. And this lists a whole bunch of software like Dom's Little Warden, Yoast, OnCrawl, Deep Crawl, Majestic Sitebulb, lots of SEO type tools you can use in digital marketing that have kind of special offers, reduced prices, extended trials during the coronavirus. So searchstarterpack.com if anyone does want to check that out.
Awesome.
So what I wanted to follow up there, Lucy, was the kind of second point, which was about the businesses adapting
Yeah.
during this time to changing demand. So I've seen loads of people posting all the different and some quite funny Google Trends graphs for things that,
Yeah.
are radically shifting, from everything from people wanting shaved heads like mine to I found a 10 times rise. I think it was 10 times in people searching for stuff like DIY tattoos, which is kind of worrying.
Yeah.
Um, but what can companies do apart from looking at Google Trends to get some data on maybe how search behavior is changing or how customer intent is changing? Where can they start looking at that to how they can adapt their business if they're still, doing sales?
Yeah, so outside of Google Trends, this is one I absolutely love, and it fits now perfectly. But it's the go-to for me whenever I want to look at any kind of search intel, and that is a website's. If you have the luxury of having this, your internal search engine, your site search, because this is gold. I mean, the bigger the site, the richer the data. But to give you a perfect example, and something that I wrote about in a post a couple of weeks ago now was, Holland and Barrett, they're a big sort of healthcare slash kind of breaking into pharma slightly brand here in the UK. And of course, you've then got Superdrug, which is again a renowned kind of healthcare, fashionable pharma kind of brand. Both of those brands must have, I mean, I can't prove it, I don't have the data, but they must have a good bunch of people going onto their site and searching for COVID-19 or coronavirus or synonyms of that particular word. Um, and of course, that right there is kind of the capital of what it is your customers are coming to you for, what it is they're now searching for. What is the things that they're looking for now that they weren't searching for, say, last month, or even as close as yesterday, or even maybe the last hour, depending on how much traffic and data you have. So, leveraging your internal search queries is a really powerful way of understanding what things your user base is looking for that you may or may not be aware of right now. And the reason why I think it's a really big deal is because brands like Boots, and again, Lloyd's Pharmacy, in the same similar space as Holland and Barrett and Superdrug, have done precisely that. So if you search for coronavirus, they give you an experience. They give you information, links to NHS Direct, links to resources, product categories you can go and take a look at, and so on and so on. Now, no one's going to have put that effort in if it wasn't a query worth looking at. Chasing is probably the wrong word, but it's definitely a query that someone in the marketing team's thought of, or they've got some report or automation somewhere that said, hey, this is a query that spiked in the last X number of days, hours. Um, Go and check it out and see what's going on. But that would be my absolute first port of call, is check out your internal search queries.
That's really interesting. I think as well, people might even be looking for, they still are probably looking for the same products they always were. It's just changing the words they're using. I think a good example of that we've had for, decades, many years, is things like, ibuprofen. When you buy branded packets that say it's, targeted back pain or specific migraine pain, and a lot of the time it's actually the same tablets, but it's just people are looking, I have back pain, therefore I need this. So the same thing, I think, is being, if I understand what you're saying, is being um, happening now, which is people are still looking for the same things that Boots have on Holland About have always sold, but they're just looking for it in context to what's going on, and that's a huge opportunity if you're actually missing out on that, right?
Yeah, big time. I mean, I worked in e-commerce pharmaceutical for a couple of years, and there was a series of documentaries slash programs that were on Channel 4, and I forget the name of the program, but it was this kind of thing about shopping smarter, and not necessarily go for big brands, because there's other products that are exactly the same at a lower cost. And one of the big ones that they spoke about was drugs, over the counter drugs. So paracetamol being one, hay fever allergy tablets being a second one, and everyone kind of feels that going for brands like Panadol, or Nurofen are more effective or better somehow than, say, the regular supermarket branded paracetamol or ibuprofen or whatever it is. And actually, the active ingredient is exactly the same. They're even sometimes made in the same factory, the same facilities. It's just the packaging you get at the end. And then, of course, there's a huge difference in price. You might be looking at £3 something for a pack of Nurofen versus 30, 40 pence for a pack of the exact same thing, that's unbranded from, say, Tesco. And that made a massive swing in what we found in internal search queries, literally within hours of that programming going live. So rather than people searching for Nurofen, or say, What's that massive brand of allergy? Piriton, for example, or Piri, as it's called now. They'd be searching for loratadine instead, which is the active ingredient inside one of the Piriton brands. So being able to kind of adapt to that is really quite powerful. And I didn't watch the program, so I wouldn't have realized it until I went down an internal search rabbit hole and connected it back to that program and realized, this is why people have started searching for Piri-less or Piriton less. But all of a sudden, these scientific drug active ingredient names are flying. Like, well, what's going on? But yeah, it's really important to check that stuff out.
I think it's just a really interesting whole side conversation there, because I've seen the studies actually where they've reported that the pain relief from the branded tablets is reported as higher than the generic ones.
Yeah,
Um, and obviously there's a placebo effect there, but I think especially with something like pain relief, which is symptomatic, that reported pain relief are the same thing essentially. If someone
uh,
doesn't feel they're experiencing pain, then
yeah,
by any measure they're not. So I found that really interesting. I think I've seen similar ones as well, when I've spoken to doctors, and they're saying when they've run these trials that big red pills have better reported effects than small white pills. So I think
interesting.
there's a whole interesting kind of placebo psychology / marketing thing there that
Yeah,
maybe we need to get a doctor on, or someone that's done one of these studies. Anyway, um, for the businesses, Luke, that maybe aren't they aren't massively affected in that they're still doing online sales, they're
yep.
e-commerce, and maybe they're trying to make up for lost revenue in physical stores. For these people, conversion is more important than ever. What kind of advice, and I know it's a difficult question, but what kind of advice can you give these companies if they haven't looked at conversion rates before? Where should they start? What should their priorities be? What should they be looking at?
Okay, one of the big ones, or one of the, I guess, the starting points I'd like to jump into is for sure products that you get a lot of traffic on, but don't necessarily convert very well. And I guess everyone can go down rabbit holes and try and find out what it is, whether it's just low demand for that product, is the pricing right, is there something in the description that's inaccurate or ineffective? But those sort of things are a really good point to start, because ideally on larger sites you may be able to identify a pattern. Um, where, let's say, for example, you have an e-commerce store that has in upwards of 1,000 products, and you can identify 150, 200 of them that have high amounts of traffic, but low conversion. You could definitely take a look at these and find if there's any themes. Could it be a lack of reviews? Could it be a poor product description and lack of an image? Could it be something more technical in terms of the page load speed? Are the images too large and therefore it's just taking forever? Is it in stock? Because I remember when I worked in house, we had a frequent call every single week, or a frequent meeting every single week, which is the whole up and down, week on week, month on month stuff. Why is this particular product or brand or category selling better or worse than it did before? And the absolute first piece of evidence I'd ever bring to that meeting is the item or items they're asking about are in stock. Or were they in stock before and they're not now, or were they out of stock before and they're now back in stock? This is a really big one, because it doesn't matter how well and how effective your SEO, your paid search campaign, your landing pages are. If you don't have the stock, you cannot sell it. So it's really important to make sure that of all the data you're looking at, first of all, is the price accurate? And can I buy the bloody thing? So that's normally a really good point to jump into first. Um, Second of all, I think one of the big wins I like to jump into again is how you manage your discontinued um, products. So it's a whole topic in itself. We could probably have an entire podcast just talking about this. But if an item is out of stock, or if a particular product is never going to come back into stock, it's kind of gone, it's done. There's still huge amounts of opportunity to get people to look at that stock item that's no longer there and purchase something that's similar. And there's a brand that does this particularly well, and it's John Lewis, whereby, let's say, for example, you go and look at Google for best laptop. You come across an article that you really like from, say, 2019. You go to the link on that page, which points to John Lewis as a retailer, and then, that's a shame. The laptop's no longer available. It doesn't exist. They don't make it anymore. However, rather than kind of just 301 redirecting it to a category or letting it 404, then how about saying, well, look, this Lenovo 13-inch yada yada isn't available, but actually they've replaced it for 2020, and this is the new model. Go and take a look at that. And that can be a really powerful way of kind of turning a products that you can't buy anymore, and dead products, if you like, into a potential sales opportunity. And when you apply that across potentially thousands or hundreds of different products, that can be a big change in conversion performance across your brand or retail.
Just a question, very technical, specific question there. That's a really interesting strategy. We've talked to clients about all the different options around redirecting and sort of re-steering people over to other products, and whether we leave discontinued products like that up, like you say, and say here's the nearest or most, the updated version. Do you
Mhm.
no index those pages if you're going to be dealing with a churn where after a few years it might be thousands of pages?
Yeah, do you know what? That's a really good question. I'm glad you asked it. So, um, I hate to say these two words together, but it really depends.
I know what they're going to be.
Exactly, it depends, right? But the reason why I say that is because eventually all of these things should be no indexed at some point. But it depends on how, let's say, for example, it discontinued today, an item discontinued today. You may decide to take it out of the index immediately, or you may decide to have it in the index for a month, for 3 months, for a year. It really depends on what it is. So, to give you a specific example, let's say you're in the world of sofas. For example, the churn of a sofa is a heck of a lot slower than, say, technology or something that's really granular like fashion, whereby your no index time for fashion may be, say, a month, but your no index time for a sofa may be 12 months because a sofa normally stays an entire calendar year before they replace it for next summer. Um, but it really does depend on your situation. So I think one thing we can absolutely agree on is at some point they should know index for sure. But when that happens is entirely up to you. But I think this is kind of where SEO meets CRO and then meets UX because,
Yeah.
you know, just because you've no indexed a page doesn't mean it's not important anymore because people can still get to these products from, if let's say, for example, you had this item in last year's Black Friday deal, it's still a backlink. Let's say you sent an email out to someone a year ago and for some reason have stumbled across it and want to go and check it out again. There's still traffic from that particular thing, something you posted on social. Again, there's still traffic from that. So just because it's not in the index doesn't mean that page can no longer serve a purpose. There's still technical documents that people might want, instruction manuals that people might need. They still might want FAQs. They might want to buy a used version of that on eBay, for example. So they're just Googling specific examples. And I think moving into eBay really briefly, they have absolutely nailed this particular model because if we all know eBay listings are relatively short lived. You can have an auction or you can have a buy it now listing or a classified ad or whatever. Um, but imagine being in a situation where if you watched an item or you lost out on an item because the bid ended or you didn't want to pay that much for the item, if that item got 404 immediately after the end of the auction, how irritating would that be? And also, eBay couldn't get you in a situation of saying, hey, you've missed out on this, but there's one that's also about to end in the next 24 hours that you can go and check out here. So, the eBay have built a business model purely on discontinued products, dead auctions, items you can't buy anymore, and that is a really good example of how you can build a really strong UX and CRO case from discontinued products and still considering SEO as well. And to give you a very specific example, I found in a presentation I did on this, I think at Brighton SEO a year or two back, that I found an eBay auction item for a VHS tape that was 10 years old, but it was still active. It wasn't in the index, but it was a page that still existed. And it was for a super rare, exclusive Popeye something like a really sort of poignant collector's piece. And I imagine that still gets some traffic today. But what they're doing with that is sending people from that item that ended 10 years ago to similar items that are available today. And I think that's the whole kind of notion about how you can turn discontinued products into a CRO kind of situation.
So while we're talking about platforms like eBay, so I'd class eBay, places like Amazon as these other marketplaces where you can sell your products. If you're in a position where you're a small business or SME, medium-sized business, you traditionally haven't sold online, and I've seen quite a few of these where they've suddenly gone, eek, we need to start actually giving people away just to buy what we're selling.
Mhm.
Is it a good time for these people to start looking at marketplaces like eBay stores and Amazon? Or, and there's a second question here, if SMEs do want this kind of pop-up e-commerce presence, they're a bit behind the curve, they need to move fast. Is there a platform? And I know it does depend, but generally you'd recommend to an SME. I've seen people suggesting Shopify, WooCommerce, Wix, Magento. Do you have any guidance for small businesses here? They're in the situation of, we have product, it's possible to sell it online. We haven't. We need to get up and running as quick as possible.
Yeah, for sure. So just to guess to answer the first part of that question. So, should small businesses get on a marketplace, Amazon, eBay? Um, Absolutely. I think if I had to, just because I essentially started out on eBay, that was where my e-commerce, uh, you know, debut, if you like, really started for me. When I actually, that was all I sold on was eBay, and I sold HDMI cables right when HDTV first came out. eBay can be really, really powerful, and I'd absolutely recommend people to go and make a thing of it. I think there's definitely pros and cons for it. Yes, the competition is fierce. Yes, the fees can be expensive once you kind of tap in PayPal and your listing fees and all this sort of good stuff. But I guess one thing it absolutely allows you to do is test the water without any real investment outside of your kind of minute fees. So if you've got a listing you want to go and try out, if you've got some copy you want to work on, if you even want to understand whether you've got an audience for your product, then eBay can be a really quick um, test, I guess, litmus paper, if you like, to see whether there's a market there, whether you want to list it or search for it. And I think in terms of eBay intel and research, I'd absolutely recommend a tool called Terapeak, which is kind of like SEMrush for eBay. And it allows you to kind of attach eBay queries, so people who are browsing eBay and what they're searching for, to rankings of products and sellers and power sellers and how they're doing it and kind of the things that they are using to be the best in their particular category. So moving on to, I guess, the CMS of choice, the e-commerce platform of choice, then I have two favorites for a number of reasons. One is absolutely WooCommerce. I think WooCommerce is brilliant. And the other one is Shopify. And I'll jump into both reasons on those in a second. So Shopify is kind of like a quick, low barrier to entry way of building a site and getting something out into the market space that can help you out. But as many SEOs know, it's got a glass ceiling. And I don't really like the retainer model. I don't like the fact that you have to pay each month for a front end, if you like. So Shopify is great. It looks good. It's an easy checkout. Again, it's really easy to set up. You can customize the design, but your checkout always looks the same. Your SEO has a glass ceiling. Your CRO opportunities and how you integrate Google Analytics with things like data layer and bits and pieces like that is a challenge. But saying that, if you're a small business and you're not necessarily tech savvy and you don't necessarily want to go and consult the help of a web designer or something like that, then Shopify absolutely has its place in the market. Of course, it's a big deal. I think if you're a little bit more tech savvy and have a little bit more time, then I would always recommend people go with WooCommerce. And the reason why is it kind of gives you all the benefits of what Shopify would, with a slightly higher technical um, entry point, but it's a heck of a lot more flexible from an SEO point of view, from a design point of view, from customization. Um, and I think to give you one really good example, when it comes to e-commerce, your internal search engine is literally the single most important part of any e-commerce site, in my opinion. So with WooCommerce, you can use plugins, and I don't mean plugins as in like the WordPress repository. I mean there's some really powerful search engine providers like DoFinder, like SLI, loads of different search providers where they bolt straight into WordPress, and you can have an enterprise-esque search engine with prediction and AI and all sorts of cool stuff for a low cost, versus Shopify, which you have to use their native internal search, which isn't particularly great. So I'm guessing with that information, it then depends, once I've relayed that to a potential client, it's then a case of allowing them to kind of think, right, do I want something really quick? Do I not want something with a technical payload? Or am I okay to go and spend a little bit more money and get onto WooCommerce? So I'd normally say they're the absolute two pivotal startup, CMS e-commerce platforms to go with.
Luke, that's really, really great advice. we're running now. We've done about just over 30 minutes. So I'd just say, is there any last tips you want to share for businesses? Maybe I think something really interesting we haven't covered is how should businesses approach messaging around coronavirus? Is it important they talk about it? Have people heard enough about it? What would your recommendations be on that?
Yeah, again, a really solid question again. So, I think one big anxiety that people have got at the moment, if somebody wants to buy from you, one of their first questions they have right now is, are they still trading? And if they are still trading, can they get the goods out to me in a reasonable amount of time? Um, they're two questions that I guess are more important than ever at the moment. So, things like live chat on the site will really help because it kind of adds a bit of humanity to a very technical, digital front end. And I think being very clear with it and saying, look, okay, we've been impacted by coronavirus, and as a result, orders may take a couple of days, a week longer to process than normal. And yes, although you may lose some sales as a result of being transparent, I think you have to also think about your reputation. The last thing you want to do is for someone to pump money into your business expecting it to happen in next day because that's what your latest copy says that you didn't change since 2019, to then expecting next day delivering it not happening. It'd be a heck of a lot better for you to have maybe like a top banner or something where it's on your site that says, hey, look, we're all working here, we're all trying our best, there's going to be some delays. And again, that live chat to be able to just kind of, if anyone's got any immediate questions, you can answer them quite quickly. And I think off the back of that, if you have some really powerful FAQs that potential customers keep asking you, then build a page for it. Build a page that tells them, are you still open during the coronavirus? Could be one major FAQ. You might even be in a situation where you decide to extend your returns policies because people can't get to the post office as fast or they're not collecting your orders as fast. These little things here can maybe make it easier for someone to buy from you than, say, buying from Amazon or another competing retailer. But I'd say absolutely be as transparent as you can.
Thank you, Luke. That's a brilliant answer. And thank you so much for giving up your time to speak to me today. I really appreciate it.
It's been fun to speak to another adult, mate, to be honest. You've done me a favour. So, but no, I've enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
If you want to find out any more about Luke, you can check out his website at lukecarthy.com. We will be back on Monday, the 20th of April. As usual, you can find the show notes, all the links to everything we've spoken about today, and a whole transcription of this podcast at search.withcandour.co.uk. If you are listening online, remember you can subscribe to Search with Candour on basically any podcast app you can find. So please do that. Stay safe, and I will speak to you all next week.
Cheers.